Hello everyone, welcome to today's session and welcome to session 2 of your CBSE Class 10 History, Chapter 1, The Rise of Nationalism in Europe with me, Amirash. And I teach you science and social science on this amazing platform of the world. And I know it's been very long since we've met last time, CBSE Class 10. And even I was thinking that when would the next video I would be making. So this is the video, and in this we will be doing some of the important concepts related to your history chapter 1. Okay, that is the rise of nationalism in Europe. We've already done one session which actually had a lot of connectivity issues, so probably those of you who couldn't understand, I will be making a one shot session for the entire chapter when the chapter will be finished. So let's have the agenda for today. What we will be doing is the making of nationalism in Europe. So this is the agenda for today, the making of nationalism in Europe, how nationalism came into the picture that we will be understanding. Okay, how the views of the people changed, and a lot more we will be discussing. Conservatism, liberalism, revolutionaries, and very interesting topic. Now I would like to ask you to come with me to mid 18th century. Now what do I mean by mid 18th century? Like you can say around 1750s, okay, during that time. So at that time there were no nation states. We discussed about nation states, okay, in the previous session. In case you've missed that, you can definitely check that out. So during that time there were no nation states formed, because there were autocratic monarchies in Eastern and Central Europe, right? Autocratic meaning the monarchies which are having a lot of power. So those monarchies were there in Eastern and Central Europe. So here you are able to see the map, I guess. See this region that we are discussing about. Now, what was happening, that people of this region did not share any kind of collective identity or common culture. We read in nation states there are some of the parameters on which countries are judged. So in the Eastern and the Central Europe, people did not share the collective identity, point number one, and they spoke different languages. They had different culture, which did not promote unity. Okay, now in your NCRT, an example is given of the Habsburg Empire. Now the Habsburg Empire, in this empire, there were many states like the Austria-Hungary region, Alpine region, Austria, Sudetenland, and Bohemia. So all these regions, people spoke different languages. Okay, their culture was totally different. So how could this be converted into, or I would use the word transformed into, a nation state? It was really very difficult. So such differences did not easily promote a sense of political unity, as I told you, because of different languages, different culture. The only tie binding these diverse groups together was a common allegiance to the emperor. Now this concept is important, so pay attention. What do I mean by this? Common allegiance to the emperor, that they had the same. Acha, let me change the color. I think it's not visible. Okay, so they had the same emperor. This was the common allegiance. Okay, they were under the same emperor. Okay, the same emperor were ruling them. So this was something which was common. Otherwise, the culture was different, which should be same, so that collective identity can be formed. For collective identity, okay, as well as languages were different. So that is why this was the, you can say, a kind of a problem. Now let's try to understand the aristocracy and the new middle classes. Now aristocracy means the high social groups, which were, or you can say the social classes which were placed at the high level, upper level, and the new middle classes which emerged during that time. Now we have to understand two concepts, the concepts of peasants and aristocrats. Peasants were in majority, but they had less power. Okay, majority, less power, peasants. And aristocrats means the people of a high social class. They were in minority, less in number but more power. Peasants more in number, less power. Aristocrats less in number, more power. Now let's try to understand some of the characteristics of aristocrats. What were they? Point number one, they had a common way of living. They used to live in a common way, right? Point number two, own estates and townhouses in the countryside. Estates and townhouses, they are some estates are some kind of land. Townhouses, you all know, okay, some kind of villa type. Okay, now one more interesting thing, that they spoke French for the purpose of diplomacy and in high society, to show that they were at a high level, because French at that time was very popular. Families were connected by marriage ties. Now they used to marry with each other, the aristocrats, so that they can be connected. And they were socially and politically powerful. You can start writing them down in your notebook, because these will help you during your revision time. So this was the thing of aristocrats. Now moving on to the characteristics of the peasants. Now peasants, as I told you, they were majority in population, and they were in the West Europe, as I talked about, they were tenants and small owners. Tenants means, you say in Hindi, kiraedar, right? Who like own your land for some time, who rent your house. I not land, I mean. And in Eastern and Central Europe, there were serfs. Okay, serfs are a kind of peasants only who do the work, labor and all. Okay? So this was the case of peasants, the characteristics. Clear? Now let's move to industrialization. See, whenever there are industries, whenever there are railways, then there is growth in the economy. Now, because of this industrialization, new social class emerged, which was the commercial class, working class, or you can say the middle class. So this was a new social class which emerged at the top. Wait a second. At the top, as I told you, which color will be suitable? There were the aristocrats, as I told you. And at the bottom, we had the peasants. So these were the classes. High class, wait a second. Acha, just a second, give me a minute. Aristocrats. They were the high class, they were the low class. Majority, minority. Minority and majority. And they had more power, they had less power. Okay, now this new social class was against the aristocratic privileges. The privileges or the opportunities which these aristocrats got by birth, they rejected them. They were against them. And they became the force of unity and nationalism. Very, very important. This middle class, they revolted a lot because they were against this. Okay. Now moving on to the liberalism. This is an ideology. As I talked about nationalism, liberalism is also connected to it. Now just a second, yeah. By the name only you are able to see that it is somewhere related to freedom. Okay, liberalism was related to freedom, because now for middle class, what this word liberalism meant, meaning is free. Okay, liberalism has been derived from a Latin word liber, which means free. Freedom for individual, equality before law. What the middle classes expected, that they wanted freedom for individual and equality before law. Now, what was political liberalism? In the government form. Government by consent. They wanted a government by consent, and they wanted the end of autocracy, end of overpower, end of clerical privileges, the privileges by birth, and private property right. So this they wanted. Okay, in political liberalism. No voting rights for women and men without property. That is why they protested throughout the. Wait a second, let me change my color. throughout the 19th and early 20th century. Still, even if so much of things were there in liberalism, voting rights, universal adult franchise wasn't there. So women still struggled for voting rights. Now moving on to economic liberalism. It must be related to your economy. Mainly it talked about your taxes. Okay, by economy you are able to understand it must be related to taxes, it must be related to money. Right. So what they wanted freedom of market, abolition of taxes. The taxes which were imposed, they did not want those taxes. Let's move ahead. Now, a wave of economic nationalism. Very, very important. Try to concentrate over here. Now, we all know that Napoleon's administrative system had created a confederation of 39 states. Very, very important. So, in the confederation means you can say when Napoleon used to fight, so he used to collect those states. He used to you can say kabza karna, or you can say he used to seize those states. So 39 states he had created, and then the problem was that each of which had its own currency and weighing system. For example, let me explain it very clearly. Suppose if you live in Maharashtra, for example. Okay, there the currency is, let's say, a euro, for example. And if you go to visit Tamil Nadu, then the currency becomes, let's say, dollars. So wouldn't you have to suffer a little? What do you think? Just think about it. From Maharashtra to Tamil Nadu, the same country, but states are different and the currency is different. Weighing system is different. Here in Maharashtra, your weight is around 36 kg, and here in Tamil Nadu, it's 40 kg. Now, wouldn't this create a problem? Tell me. Chalo, this is just about the weight and all. But then, if I talk about custom barrier in each city, it hindered economic growth and exchange because of those customs, that the barriers of currency and all. The trade was suffering, you can say. I would use the word. Okay. So because of which there was problem in trade, economic growth, and exchange because of this. Big and as you know, every problem has a solution, and this also had, and the solution was Zollverein. What was Zollverein? It was a custom union, okay, which was there. But who established it? What do you think? In 1834, learn this year, please, important. Initiated by Prussia. This was initiated by Prussia, this customs union. And what was the role? It reduced the number of currencies from 30 to 2, so that if there would be exchange in currencies, it would be comparatively lesser. And the loss is also going to be lesser if at all loss is going to be there. Abolish the tariff barriers so that there can be a smooth economic exchange, and facilitated railway mobility for economic interests and unification. Okay, so this is about Zollverein. This is, you can say, a 2-marker question. These points you have to write, and you will easily be able to fetch 2 marks. All right, now moving on to a new conservatism in Europe. Now, with liberalism, we also come to know about the conservatism, which also emerged in Europe. Now, in your Russian Revolution in class 9, you must have read about conservatives. Who were the conservatives? Is somebody able to recall? Yes, they were the people who believed in importance of tradition, importance of their culture, established institutions and customs, and preferred gradual development to quick change. So they were against change, but gradually they started believing in change. But initially they, you can say, they resisted the change, because they believed in preserving their culture, preserving their culture, their heritage, and all. Okay, so when this was there, then definitely they wouldn't want quick change. Clear? And what they supported, their ideologies are important. One second, let me change my pen. See, they supported monarchy, aristocrats, Europe, nobles and clergy were mostly conservatives. So first of all, they supported monarchy. They were against the democracy because they wanted to be in power, right? If there will be democracy, their power would be reduced. Aristocrats of Europe, nobles and clergy were mostly conservative. Okay, like in French Revolution, you all must have read about it. Then the conservatism that we will be learning. Napoleon got defeated in 1815 in the Battle of Waterloo. We all know. Okay, after it, European governments got driven by conservatism. After Napoleon's defeat, conservatism came into action. And as you know, the conservatives, they opposed radical changes in society. You can say they believed in gradual change, not quick change. Okay, as you know. Now, they supported some of the Napoleon's administrative changes, though they believed it could make state power more effective and strong. Okay, so although they were against this all, but then they still believed that some of the changes might give them more power. So now, just tell me, if you are there in a condition, what would you think? Tell me. Okay, let's see what happens over here. A modern army, an efficient bureaucracy, a dynamic economy, the abolition of feudalism and serfdom. So what they thought, this would make their rule more rational, more efficient, okay, and they would get more power. So it is just about power, this whole concept. Now, very, very important, Treaty of Vienna. Please mark this slide because this will help you to score very good marks. Now, in 1815, here is important market, 1815. Conservative nations, four conservative nations, the BART. What are those? Britain, Russia, Prussia, Austria. They collectively defeated Napoleon. So in the Battle of Waterloo, as we here talked, these four nations were against Napoleon and they defeated. Now after that, what they did, they met at Vienna. Vienna is a place in Austria. Okay, to draw up a settlement for Europe, to draw a document, you can say a kind of planning for Europe. And the Congress was hosted by Austrian Chancellor Duke Metternich. So he was the chancellor who hosted the party treaty, you can say. Now the objective of Treaty of Vienna, what was the main aim? To bring back monarchy and undo the changes done by Napoleon. So two things were there. They wanted monarchy to come back and the changes which Napoleon made to be undone. Okay, now these 4 points, quickly take a screenshot everyone, because now I will be writing something on the slides. Number one, the Bourbon dynasty was restored to power and France lost the territories it had annexed under Napoleon. So the Bourbon dynasty, which was of Louis XVI in French Revolution, we read, that was restored to power. Okay, I think you wouldn't be able to see now. It was restored to power, and along with that, France lost the territories it had annexed under Napoleon. So territories were also lost. Okay, they were also lost. Series of states were set up on the boundaries of France to prevent French expansion. Now again, what they did, they were so cunning, these people, that they set up some series of states so that the France could not be expanded, right, again by any of the ruler. The Kingdom of the Netherlands was set up in north and Genoa was added to Piedmont in the south to prevent France from annexing its territories again. Now Prussia was given territories on western frontiers. Austria was given control of northern Italy. So as you know, the bar, okay, so as we have heard about, okay, yes. So are you all able to understand the concept? Okay. Now, the Kingdom of the Netherlands was set up in North and Genoa was added to Piedmont, as this we have read. And now next. But the German Confederation of 39 states that had been set up by Napoleon was left untouched. Now, was there a specific reason for that? What do you think? See, German Confederation of 39. Acha, is it visible now? Probably it wouldn't be visible. I can just show you again if it was not visible. Now, right now I'm on this slide of 39 states that had been set up by Napoleon was left untouched. So this wasn't changed. The German Confederation of 39 states. In the east, Russia was given part of Poland, while Prussia was given part portion of Saxony. So these are some of the facts that you have to remember. Now this is given in your NCRT, the Club of Thinkers, anonymous caricature dated to C. 1820. You can just have a look at it. It's not very important. Now a question is there for you. Conservative regimes set up in 1815 were autocratic. What does this mean? Autocracy. Conservative regimes set up in 1815 were autocratic. This means that they did not tolerate criticism and dissent. They were against any kind of criticism. If anyone would criticize them, they wouldn't like it. Okay, then sought to curb activities that questioned the legitimacy of autocratic government. Okay, suppose if any activity is done against them, which can question their power, then they would not tolerate that. Impose censorship law. Censorship means suppression of expression. You cannot express yourself in the form of media, poetry, literature, or any kind of thing. What was said in, and they also controlled what was said in the newspapers. Nothing should be against them. Books, plays, and songs that and reflected the ideas of liberty and freedom. Because they were against this, they were in favor of only and only one thing, that was monarchy. Okay, now moving on to the revolutionaries. See, if there is negative, there is something positive. If there is something positive, there is something negative. So because of this, there is a balance in our society. Now, because of conservatism, it gave the rise to the revolutionaries who would revolt against it, right? Now, the revolutionaries are the people who want radical changes in society. Now, the revolutionaries are totally opposite to conservatives. Conservatives want gradual change, very slow or no change. But the revolutionaries, they want radical change, very quick change in society. As a counterforce, revolutionaries started to grow in Europe. They mostly belong to middle class section of society. So what they did, the revolutionaries, they started to grow, they started revolting, and they mostly belong to the middle class. Okay? They were against monarchical forms that had been established after the Vienna Congress. They believed in liberty and freedom. So they did not want autocratic monarchs to rule. Instead, they wanted liberty and freedom for all. Most of them wanted creation of nation states. As you know, nation states were very important for them. The fear of repression drove many liberal nationalists underground. Secret societies sprang up in many Arab states to train revolutionaries and spread their ideas. Now, what you have to understand is that during that time, they were afraid of conservatives. Okay, because they could do anything to them. So that is why what they did, they started forming the secret societies. I think the pen is not visible. Yes, underground societies which the conservatives couldn't get to know. Okay, to train them, because in front of them, if they were trained, the monarchs couldn't tolerate that. Okay, so that's why underground societies were made. Now, a very important revolutionary, that is Giuseppe Mazzini, and this is a fixed question from board examination point of view, so please learn. You can take a screenshot of the slide. I've covered all the points over here. Now, first of all, some facts are there related to him that you have to learn. Number one, where was he born? So he was born in Genoa, Italy. He was an Italian revolutionary. In 1807, he was born, right? And he was a member of Secret Society of the Carbonari. This is the name of his secret society. Just keep it in mind. Okay, it's not like it's too important, but in the short note, this might be asked. He was sent into exile. What do I mean by exile? Exile means, what you say, jail, right? Or you can even write prison. Okay, so prison. Okay, so he was sent to exile for attempting a revolution in Liguria at the age of 24. So he was a young man, right? And he founded two underground societies, very important. Number one, Young Italy in Marseille, because he was of Italy, and Young Europe in Bern, because Italy was in Europe. So these were the two secret societies which he founded. Found, I mean not founded, found. Find ka found, yeah. Mazzini believed, now his beliefs, his ideology. Second, yeah. So what was his ideology? That is important. Which means what he actually believed. Now he believed that God had intended nations to be the natural units of mankind. So nations were natural units. So Italy could not continue to be a patchwork of small states and kingdoms. In the later portion, when you study the making of Italy, you will study that Italy was divided into seven states, seven different kind of states with different culture and different tradition. Okay, so this could not be the sense of collective identity. It had to be unified into a nation. It could not be a patchwork of small nations. Like suppose if you have your, this is your Italy and it is divided into so many states. No, it had to unify together to form one common nation. So Mazzini believed this, and he was a very strong revolutionary as well. Now, following his model, secret societies were set up in Germany, France, Switzerland, and Poland. So, see, people started taking inspiration from him. You are able to understand. Okay, because of his relentless opposition to monarchy and his vision of democratic republics, which frightened the conservatives, because conservatives started thinking that these revolutionaries would soon win. Okay, because of their, you can say, hard work, their determination, and relentless opposition to monarchy. Okay, as well as vision of democratic republics. Now, Metternich. Who was Metternich? You know, let me change the color. He was the Austrian. Yes, he was the Austrian chancellor that you already know. Okay, now he described him as the most dangerous enemy of our social order. So the Metternich, being himself as conservative, described Mazzini as the most dangerous enemy. Okay, now it's the time for the quiz, and I am very I would say believe I'm very happy to tell you that after every session we will be having a quiz time. Why from now onwards we will be having? Because of your term 1 examination. In the term 1 examination you will only have the MCQs, and to tackle with the MCQs we need practice. We need conceptual clarity. And for getting conceptual clarity, you need to practice as much as you can. Chalo, then let's get started with the first question on your screen. You are gonna start solving the question, read it properly, and I will tell you some tips and tricks to crack SST. Which language did the aristocrats speak for diplomacy? Now, what is the question saying? First, understand that it is talking about the aristocrats first thing. First idea that you have to apply. And they are not saying generally they spoke for diplomacy, for their for maintaining their social class, high class. Which language? See, definitely not English, because you know that English was spoken in Great Britain, and aristocrats we are talking about Western and Central Europe. So no. And elimination method you are going to use, eliminate all the options that can be confusing, right? Or that can be like you're sure that they wouldn't be the answer. Dutch, we did not even speak about Dutch at all, eliminated. Then the confusion remains between French and German. But then as we discussed, the correct answer is going to be French. They spoke French for diplomacy, right? So this was the first MCQ. Moving on to the second MCQ. Giuseppe Mazzini found two secret societies. They were Young Italy in dash and dash and burn. Now this is a fill in the blank question. First let me speak the options. A. Genoa, Young France. B. Venice, Young Europe. C. Marseille, Young France. D. Marseille, Young Europe. Now first thing here they are asking about Giuseppe Mazzini, who was he was an Italian revolutionary. Giuseppe Mazzini was an Italian revolutionary. Is that clear? So definitely he wouldn't establish in his own hometown. Okay, so it got cancelled. Now first of all they are asking Young Italy in. So here you have to write the place and dash and burn. So burn, this place is given, you have to talk about the secret society in this. So Young Italy was established in Marseille. This we know. And there are two options with Marseille, but then you have to be very careful because the next option would determine if it will be correct. Now dash and burn. Now this is confusing Young France or Young Europe because France is in Europe and Europe, yeah. But then as the answer suggests, it is Marseille and Young Europe, definitely. Last question for today from the previous session, and this is a PYQ as well. This is a previous question, so pay attention. It says, who destroyed democracy in France? Was it Giuseppe Mazzini, Adolf Hitler, Napoleon Bonaparte, Otto von Bismarck? Now, number one thing that we are not at all discussing about Adolf Hitler in this scenario. He was like after a long time he was born, right? In 1900s, his regime was there. So how can we just discuss right now? Then Giuseppe Mazzini, as I talked, he was an Italian revolutionary, so he could not do that. Otto von Bismarck, you will be reading in the Making of Germany that he was the chief minister of Prussia. So which option is left? Definitely Napoleon Bonaparte. So that's it for the quiz, and one homework question that I am giving. Explaining three provisions of Treaty of Vienna of 1815, and you have to let me know the answer in the comments. Okay, comments below as soon as possible. Okay, thank you so much for attending the session. I hope you enjoyed. Do not forget to like and subscribe to the channel for getting notifications as well. So bye bye.